Imagine tearing down the highway in an Oldsmobile 442, feeling the power of a 400 horsepower V8 beneath you, or cruising in the one-year wonder, the Rally 350, in a blazing yellow that nobody could ignore. But what made these cars not just fast but legendary? Was it the performance, the styling, or something else entirely? Let's find out which Oldsmobile truly defined the muscle car era. Number 10, the 1949 Oldsmobile Rocket 88. The 1949 Oldsmobile Rocket 88 is often overshadowed by icons like the Pontiac GTO and the Mustang, but it laid the groundwork for what we now call the muscle car. It may not have had the flashy, rebellious attitude we associate with muscle cars today, but it definitely packed a punch. In fact, this car is so legendary that it even inspired one of the first rock and roll songs. Jackie Brenston's Rocket 88. How cool is that? Let's rewind to 1949, when Oldsmobile came up with a simple yet brilliant idea. Take a small car and drop in a powerful engine. This formula would go on to define the muscle car segment for decades. While it wasn't called a muscle car back then, the Rocket 88 was fast, affordable, and stylish enough to turn heads. It brought high-performance driving to everyday people, not just racers or the elite. Speaking of performance, the heart of this beast was the Rocket V8 engine, designed by GM engineer Charles Kettering. Kettering was already a legend for his work on the electric starter and leaded gasoline, but it took him over 20 years to develop this powerhouse. The engine was a 303 cubic inch V8 producing 135 horsepower and a hefty 263 pounds per foot of torque. Now you might think, 135 horsepower? That's not much. But back then, it was a game changer. The Rocket 88 could hit 97 miles per hour and go from 0 to 60 miles per hour in just 13 seconds. A big deal for a car that also served as a practical family vehicle. Curiosity Loop 1. But what made this seemingly simple car so revolutionary for its time? Could it have been the engine or the way it captured the public's imagination? Well, in NASCAR's debut season, the Rocket 88 won 5 of the 8 Grand National races. That's right, it was a race-winning machine. And for several years, competitors were left in the dust trying to catch up with Oldsmobile's new engine technology. So, what do you think? Did the Rocket 88 set the stage for the muscle car era? But before the muscle cars took center stage, Oldsmobile was already making waves with a different kind of powerhouse. In 1961, they introduced the Starfire, a car that blended luxury and performance like never before, setting the stage for the muscle car revolution to come. This car was Oldsmobile's answer to the growing demand for luxury and performance. The Starfire was introduced as a sleek, all-new model with its stunning convertible design and loaded with features that made it stand out from the crowd. And let's not forget, Oldsmobile wasn't just following trends, they were setting them. Now, what made the Starfire so special? Well, first off, it was Oldsmobile's flagship model in 1961, priced at a whopping $4,647, which is about $47,381 in today's money. That made it the most expensive Oldsmobile of the time, more expensive than even their larger 98 models. But if you were in the market for a grand tourer, the Starfire delivered in style and luxury. Under the hood, it packed a powerful 394 cubic inch V8, Oldsmobile's strongest engine that year. The 394 cubic inch Skyrocket V8 wasn't just for show. It produced 330 horsepower at 4,600 RPM, making sure the Starfire had the muscle to back up its bold looks. But here's a fun fact. It was also the first U.S. full-size production car to feature an automatic transmission with a console-mounted floor shifter. And let's talk about those luxurious details. The Starfire came loaded with leather bucket seats, a center console with a tachometer, fender skirts, and power everything. Power windows, power seats, power steering, and even power brakes. So, do you think the Starfire, with its bold and luxurious features, was ahead of its time? By 1961, Oldsmobile was capitalizing on space-age optimism with its rocket branding, and the Starfire was part of that push. While it may have shared some parts with the dynamic 88 and Super 88, its custom touches and the feeling of driving something from the future really set it apart. Unfortunately, Oldsmobile only sold 1,500 units in 1961, which makes this classic gem a rare sight today. But for those lucky enough to own one, the Starfire represents a blend of luxury and performance that was truly revolutionary. It's a car that would turn heads and still do so today. Wouldn't you love to own one of these classic beauties? But when you think of turbocharged cars, the 1962 Oldsmobile Jetfire might not be the first one that comes to mind, but it should be. This car was bold, innovative, and pushed the boundaries, even if it didn't get the fame it deserved at the time. It was a car from the early 60s that featured a factory-installed turbocharger. Sounds ahead of its time, right? Well, it was. Oldsmobile's Jetfire was the first turbocharged passenger car to hit the streets, coming out alongside Chevy's turbocharged Monza Spyder Corvair. The Americans were diving into turbo tech way before the Europeans caught up. But here's where things get tricky. The technology was far from perfect. Turbochargers back then were prone to problems like pre-ignition, detonation, and oil pressure issues, making them unreliable. And the Jetfire? Well, let's just say it earned a reputation for being a bit of a headache. Beneath that sleek exterior was a 215 cubic inch V8 engine, and when the turbo kicked in, this baby cranked out 215 horsepower, giving you 1 horsepower for every cubic inch of displacement. That's not just impressive for the early 60s. That's the kind of power that makes your heart race at every stoplight. With a 0 to 60 miles per hour time around 8 seconds, this car was fast enough to keep pace with even the mighty Corvette of the time. But here's the twist. Oldsmobile added something called the turbo rocket fuel tank. Sounds cool, doesn't it? In reality, it was a mix of distilled water, methanol, and an anti-corrosion agent meant to keep the turbo running smoothly. The problem is that this system often leaked, and drivers had to remember to refill it regularly. Forgetting to do so could lead to serious engine issues. Do you think you'd remember to top off your rocket fuel? Finding a Jetfire today is tough. With only around 200 estimated to still exist, it's a rare gem. If you do come across one, expect to pay anywhere from $45,000 to $60,000, or even more for pristine examples. But imagine the pride of owning the world's first turbocharged production car. Just imagine popping that hood at a car show. The turbo enthusiast would go nuts. As the automotive landscape evolved, Oldsmobile knew it had to keep pace with the changing tides of performance and style. Then came the 1964 442, a bold statement that combined power, agility, and the spirit of competition, forever changing the definition of what a muscle car could be. Originally an option package for the F-85 and Cutlass, the 442 got its name from its key features: a 4-barrel carburetor, 4-speed manual transmission, and dual exhausts. It was Oldsmobile's answer to performance-hungry buyers who wanted something that could go toe-to-toe with Pontiac's GTO. Oldsmobile took its 330 cubic inch V8 engine and pushed it to 310 horsepower with various tweaks, including a high-lift camshaft and heavier-duty components. The car handled just as well as it performed, thanks to a heavy-duty suspension system that improved handling and road grip. This combination of speed and agility made the 442 more than just a straight-line performer. It could handle the corners too. Though the 1964 442 was a bit more conservative than its GTO rival, it could still hit 0 to 60 miles per hour in 7.5 seconds and reach a top speed of 116 miles per hour. Only 2,999 of these were sold in its debut year, making it a rare find today. With its sharp looks, potent engine, and solid handling, the 1964 442 set the stage for Oldsmobile's future in the muscle car arena. It was about delivering a balanced performance that combined speed, handling, and a bit of everyday usability. Now let's talk about a car that tends to fly under the radar in muscle car history. 1969, Hurst Oldsmobile 442, convertible. Now when you think muscle cars, names like Ford, Dodge, and Pontiac dominate the conversation. But Oldsmobile? Not so much. That's where this beauty steps in. with power and rarity that'll make any car lover's heart race. Oldsmobile, known for big cruisers your grandparents probably drove, actually had some serious muscle, especially with the 442 and the Hurst-Olds collaboration. The Hurst-Olds came about because Olds needed to keep up with the competition, and GM's rule of no engines over 400 cubic inches was holding them back. So Olds teamed up with Hurst to find a workaround, fitting the car with a massive 455 cubic inch engine that gave it 390 horsepower and 500 pounds per feet of torque. If it was 1969, I bet you would be wishing yourself cruising down the street with the top down, the roar of that engine under the hood, the wind in your hair, and heads turning everywhere you go. This car could hit 0 to 60 in just under 6 seconds, which was blazing fast for the time. It wasn't just a showstopper on the street, it also made an appearance at the 1969 Daytona 500, with Miss Hurst herself, Linda Vaughn, waving from the back while George Hurst drove. Only 3 of these convertibles were ever made, making them some of the rarest muscle cars out there. One was destroyed, but the other 2, they're still out there, tucked away in private collections. Now let's take a trip back to 1968 when the Oldsmobile 442 really came into its own. For the first time, the 442 wasn't just an option package, it became its own model, and that move made waves in the muscle car world. Over 33,000 of these beauties were sold in 1968, each one ready to take on the streets with pure muscle under the hood. Now, Oldsmobile kept the 400 cubic inch engine from previous years, but they gave it some serious tweaks. Even though the engine displacement didn't change, the power delivery did. It was based on the newer 455 V8, which meant more torque at lower RPMs, making it a real force to be reckoned with. Curiosity Loop 2. Let me ask you, have you ever experienced the raw power of a muscle car? The 68 442 might be the one that convinced you. Performance-wise, Car Life magazine took 442 with a 3.421 rear axle and an automatic transmission for a spin, clocking 0 to 60 in a solid 7 seconds. The quarter mile, it ran it in 15.13 seconds at 92 miles per hour, topping out at a respectable 115 miles per hour. But here's where it gets even more exciting. If you went for the W30 package with a 4-speed and a 4.33 rear end, you could cut that quarter mile down to just 13.3 seconds at over 103 miles per hour. Talk about speed. Visually, the 6842 was a showstopper. Bronze copper engines, fire red air cleaners, and for the W30 models, you got those iconic Ram air intake hoses, feeding into special underbumper air scoops. Oh, and those red plastic fender wells? That was something else. 1968 also marked the end of an era with the last appearance of vent windows on hardtops and convertibles, but it introduced some modern touches like side marker lights and shoulder belts. The rear bumpers even had cutouts for those beefy exhaust tips, giving the 442 a signature look from every angle. So what do you think? Could the 1968 Oldsmobile 442 be the ultimate muscle car of the late 60s? But Oldsmobile wasn't about to sit back and let others steal the spotlight. They had something special up their sleeve, something that would turn heads and bend the rules, a partnership that would take their muscle car game to a whole new level. Let's go back to 1968, a year when the horsepower wars were raging and every car manufacturer was scrambling to get the biggest, baddest engines into their muscle cars. While Ford and Chrysler had no problem stuffing massive engines into their intermediates, GM had a strict policy: no engines bigger than 400 cubic inches in anything other than full-size cars, except for the Corvette. That is until George Hurst came along. George Hurst, the man behind Hurst Shifters, wasn't just a tinkerer, he was a visionary. One day he decided to drop a 455 cubic inch engine from a Toronado into his 442 Cutlass, and it worked like magic. This caught the eye of Jack "Doc" Watson, who convinced Oldsmobile to run with the idea. And just like that, the 1968 Hurst Olds was born, a muscle car with a 455 Rocket Vibe 8 stuffed under the hood, breaking GM's own rules in the process. Now let's talk about its looks. The Hurst Olds didn't blend in with your typical Hurst Oldsmobile 442, it came in a slick Peruvian silver paint, a color borrowed from the Toronado, with striking black accents on the hood, trunk, and around the sides. Add in those white pinstripes, and you had a car that turned heads before it even revved its engine. Speaking of that engine, the 455 V8 came in two flavors, the W45 without air conditioning, cranking out 390 horsepower, and the W46 with AC, offering a slightly milder experience. Both engines were paired with a turbo hydromatic 400 transmission and Hurst's signature dual-gate shifter, letting you switch between automatic and manual shifting. When Oldsmobile first planned production, they aimed for 500 units. But as soon as dealers got a glimpse of the prototype, orders came flooding in. By the end, 515 were built, 51 club coupes and 464 sport coupes. But Oldsmobile wasn't done pushing boundaries yet. Let me take you back to 1966, when Oldsmobile was doing something no one else in America had done in nearly 30 years. They introduced the Toronado, the first front-wheel drive car since the Cord 810/812 of the late 1930s. Now you might wonder, why was this such a big deal? Well, in the world of American cars, rear-wheel drive had always been king, especially for performance cars. But Oldsmobile had a vision, and boy, did it change things. The story of the Toronado begins with a design exercise by a guy named David North, a talented Oldsmobile stylist who sketched out what he thought was just a fun concept car back in 1962. Little did he know that design would turn into one of the most iconic cars of the 60s. Initially, it was supposed to be a smaller car, but Oldsmobile wanted it to compete with luxury cruisers like the Riviera and Thunderbird. So they beefed it up, making it larger and more impressive. But Oldsmobile didn't stop at size. They wanted something truly unique. After years of tinkering with front-wheel drive systems, they decided to give the Toronado this innovative layout, making it unlike anything else on the market at the time. And under the hood, a massive 425 cubic inch rocket V8, delivering 385 horsepower and a neck-snapping 475 pounds per feet of torque. Imagine the feeling of all that power being sent to the front wheels, something that was nearly unheard of back then. Now here's a question for you. Do you think front-wheel drive belongs on performance cars, or should it stick to more practical vehicles? Sure, the Toronado had its quirks, like drum brakes on all four wheels, which wasn't ideal given the car's weight. But despite that, it could still hit 0 to 62 miles per hour in just 9.5 seconds. Pretty impressive for a car tipping the scales at over 4,400 pounds. By 1967, Oldsmobile fixed the brake issue by adding front disc brakes, and from there, the Toronado continued to evolve. Today, the early models are sought after by collectors who love its daring design and groundbreaking technology. But Oldsmobile wasn't done flexing its muscle. As the competition heated up, they knew they had to take the 442 even further. That's when they unleashed the W30 package, a game changer that would push this already formidable machine to new heights. Let's take a trip back to 1970 when Oldsmobile was part of the muscle car arms race. Now, muscle cars were all about bragging rights, especially when it came to raw horsepower. Cars like the Boss 308 Mustang and Chevelle SS 454 were making waves, but Oldsmobile had its own twist on things. While the brand was known more for luxury, they decided to give their Cutlass a performance makeover and created the Oldsmobile 442. Here's the thing. When you hear 442, it might sound like engine displacement, but it's not. The name actually refers to a 4-barrel carburetor, 4-speed manual transmission, and dual exhaust. Some people even say the 2 stood for POSI two-wheel drive, but either way, it had nothing to do with the engine. Oldsmobile just wanted to stand out from the crowd. Curiosity Loop 3, but what made this version of the 442 so special that it outperformed even some of the most iconic competitors of its time? What was the secret under the hood that gave it such a monstrous edge in both speed and handling? Well, by 1970, the muscle car scene was in full swing, and Olds decided to step it up with a 455 V8 under the hood. It roared with 365 horsepower and a monstrous 500 pounds per feet of torque. You could even add the W30 package, which cranked things up to 370 horsepower. With this beast, Oldsmobile wasn't just about comfort anymore. They were hitting the racetrack hard. In fact, the W30 version was so good it ended up pacing the Indy 500 in 1970. Now let's talk performance. The W30 with a 4-speed ran a 14.2-second quarter mile at 102 miles per hour. But with Oldsmobile's engineers driving, it clocked in at 13.7 seconds. Imagine hitting that kind of speed in a car that was still considered upscale. What do you think? Could the Olds 442 hold its own against the Pontiacs and Chevelles of its day? But Oldsmobile wasn't done redefining muscle yet. Next came the 1970 Oldsmobile Rally 350. While the name Oldsmobile might bring to mind more refined, upscale cars, they weren't shy about jumping into the muscle car craze. The Rally 350 was their shot at offering something affordable for younger car enthusiasts who wanted muscle without the heavy insurance costs. And here's what really made it stand out. It was all yellow. Not just a splash here and there, but a bold, head-turning Sebring yellow that looked like it could light up an overcast day. Oldsmobile had already made waves with their powerful 442 and Hurst Olds models, but in 1970 they introduced the Rally 350 for those looking for something less expensive, but still packed with style. Sure, it wasn't breaking records, but with 310 horsepower and 390 pound-feet of torque, it had just enough grunt to make your heart skip a beat at every stoplight. It wasn't the most powerful muscle car, but it could still get from 0 to 60 miles per hour in about 7.7 seconds. Not bad for a car that cost much less than its competitors. The Rally 350 was available with a few different options, like a 4-speed manual or a 3-speed automatic, but all of them came with the same flashy yellow paint job, body-colored bumpers, and matching 14-inch Superstock 2 wheels. Oldsmobile thought the radical design would attract younger buyers, but that sea of yellow actually scared some people off. Now, if you were in the market back in 1970, would the bold yellow look have been too much, or would you have embraced it? Despite the styling, the Rally 350 is now considered a classic gem. With only 3,547 units produced, it's one of the more affordable muscle cars from that golden era. You can find one today for the price of a used Toyota Camry, around $20,000 to $32,000. And with the right mods or a simple vinyl wrap, you can turn it into a car that truly reflects your style. Which Oldsmobile from this list would you love to drive the most? And is there an Oldsmobile model you think should have made the top 10? Leave your thoughts in the comments section below, and don't forget to like this video and subscribe to our channel if you haven't already. Thank you for watching. We'll see you guys soon.
Imagine cruising through the streets in a car so rare, so powerful, that only a handful ever existed, and the world's forgotten about most of them. These aren't your typical supercars. We're talking about the hidden gems of the 80s, the ones that slid under the radar, but still defined an entire era of automotive performance. But why have they been nearly forgotten today? Were they ahead of their time, or just too strange to catch on? Stick around to discover 8 super rare supercars of the 80s that you probably didn't even know existed. Number 8. The Lamborghini Countach LP5000 QV. The Lamborghini Countach LP5000 QV is a car that truly defined an era of wild, wedge-shaped supercars, and it all started with a bold decision. Marcello Gandini, tasked with replacing the legendary Miura, decided to break away from the flowing lines and compact V12 engine of the past. Instead, he sketched out a futuristic wedge design that could change Lamborghini's direction forever. But how do you think the car got its unique name? Well, when Ferruccio Lamborghini first saw the prototype, he reportedly said Countach in astonishment, a word used in the Piedmontese dialect to describe something amazing or beautiful. And just like that, the car had its name. Debuting at the 1971 Geneva Motor Show, the Countach prototype was powered by a powerful 5-liter V12 engine mounted in a unique longitudinal layout. This was a huge shift from the Miura's Traverse engine, and it gave the Countach a whole new driving dynamic. The gearbox was cleverly positioned in front of the engine to balance the weight, which was a bold engineering choice that became a Lamborghini hallmark. But as with many prototypes, things didn't always go smoothly. During a high-speed test, that original 5-liter engine didn't hold up and self-destructed. So, when the production Countach LP400 came out in 1974, it featured a smaller 4-liter engine with a stronger tubular frame, and the rest is history. Now, here's where it gets fun. Over the next 2 decades, Lamborghini kept evolving the Countach. By the mid-1980s, they had added flares, spoilers, and most importantly, more power. In 1982, they finally put in that 5-liter engine that they had promised, and by 1985, they upgraded it to a 4-valve per cylinder design, pushing the power to 455 horsepower for the European version. This thing could move. Now, it's easy to get lost in the performance specs, but the Countach was more than just numbers. It became a symbol of excess, of pushing boundaries, both in design and in performance. Can you imagine what it must have felt like to drive one of these beasts on a winding road? That raw power, the roar of the V12, the feeling of controlling something that seemed almost untamable. It's no wonder the Countach is still so admired today. Number 7. The Ferrari Testarossa. The Ferrari Testarossa is one of those cars that takes you right back to the neon-lit, high-rolling 1980s. It's not just the car's looks, it's the cultural icon it became. You might remember it from Miami Vice, cruising down the streets, making everyone want to be behind the wheel. But how did it get there? Let's rewind to the mid-1970s when Ferrari was already making waves with their Berlinetta Boxer series. While these cars were fast and beautiful, they weren't exactly practical. Small cabins and tricky handling didn't help. So, in 1984, Ferrari decided to go big, literally, and brought us the Testarossa. But the name? It actually dates back to Ferrari's 1957 Testarossa race car, named after the red valve covers on its engine. Ferrari paid tribute to the legacy with the Testarossa's own flat 12 engine, which produced a solid 380 horsepower. Now, I know, performance numbers are great and all, but what really made the Testarossa special wasn't just how fast it could go, that is 0 to 60 in around 5 seconds, and a top speed close to 180 miles per hour. It was the way it felt. You've got that wide, aggressive stance, those famous side stakes, channeling air to keep things cool, and the roar of the flat 12 engine behind you. And as Ferrari continued to evolve the Testarossa, they made some pretty significant tweaks. By 1999, the 512 TR came out with more power, 428 horsepower, and smoother lines. They fixed the handling, improved the brakes, and even made it a bit more driver-friendly with a reworked interior. Performance jumped too, with the 512 TR hitting 0 to 60 in under 5 seconds. But Ferrari wasn't done yet. In 1994, they rolled out the F512M, a final farewell to the Testarossa line. This car had 440 horsepower and a top speed of nearly 200 miles per hour. They even dropped the famous pop-up headlights for a more modern look. Only 501 of these were ever made, making them pretty rare. So, what do you think? Was this the peak of Ferrari's mid-engine V12 era, or was there even something greater that followed? Number 6. The Ferrari 288 GTO. The Ferrari 288 GTO is one of those rare gems in the car world, a homologation special with a story that's just as thrilling as the car itself. If you're unfamiliar with homologation specials, they're essentially road cars that are built in limited numbers, so manufacturers can enter their race cars into certain competitions. And while some homologation specials go on to become racing legends, the 288 GTO took a different path. It was designed to dominate Group B racing in the 1980s, but fate had other plans. Group B racing was fast, furious, and wildly dangerous, with Ferrari looking to make their mark. The 288 GTO was born out of this ambition, but after a tragic accident in 1986 claimed the lives of driver Henri Toivonen and his co-driver Sergio Cresto, Group B was shut down for good. So, the 288 GTO never got to hit the track it was built for. Despite this, Ferrari produced 272 of these road-going beasts between 1984 and 1987. Do you think a car built for racing but never raced still holds the same prestige? Even though it didn't get to race, the 288 GTO is far from just a pretty face. It packed a punch with its 2.8-liter twin-turbo V8 engine, delivering a solid 400 horsepower. This meant it could reach 60 miles per hour in under 5 seconds. Pretty wild for a car from the 1980s. And it wasn't just fast off the line, it was the first road car to break the 186 mile per hour barrier, hitting a top speed of 189. Now let's talk about those looks. Designed by Pininfarina, the 288 GTO had sleek wedge-like lines that still look stunning today. It wasn't just a car you admire from a distance, it was raw and exciting to drive. No driver assists, just you, the car, and the road. Imagine gripping that steering wheel, feeling the surge of turbocharged power, and knowing you're in control of something rare. With only 272 made, the 228 GTO is highly sought after by collectors today. In fact, one sold at auction for a whopping $3.9 million in 2017. So, what do you think? Does the 288 GTO deserve to be mentioned alongside Ferrari's other icons like the F40 and F50? Some drivers who've experienced all three claim that the 288 GTO is actually the most thrilling of them all. It may not have raced, but it's left a mark on car enthusiasts that can't be denied. Number 5. The Porsche 959. The Porsche 959 is a car that doesn't scream for attention, but once you've taken a second glance, it captures your curiosity. At first, it doesn't hit you with the same overwhelming presence that other supercars of its time might. You might even mistake it for a standard 1980s 911 at a quick glance. Yet, as you look closer, its subtle but important differences come into focus, and you realize you're staring at a piece of Porsche history. Launched in the late 1980s, the 959 was a technological marvel. Less than 300 were made, which adds to its mystique. And with each sighting, the car reinforces its legacy. On the surface, its design shares similarities with the G-Body 911, but it pushed Porsche into a new era of sleeker, more aerodynamic lines, an aesthetic that would influence future models like the 993, the Panamera, and even the Cayenne. Stepping inside, the 959 feels very much like a typical 1980s Porsche, bare bones and built for enthusiasts who cared more about the driving experience than luxury interiors. But once you take it on the road, the 959 shows you why it's considered revolutionary. The 959's 2.85-liter twin-turbocharged flat-six engine, with its smooth delivery of power, showcased what the future of high-performance driving could be. Despite being from an era known for turbo lag, the 959 managed to offer a power delivery that felt ahead of its time, combining a punchy low end with a top-end rush that would still compete with today's supercars. It could sprint from 0 to 60 in 3.9 seconds, not earth-shattering by modern standards, but still impressive. And its top speed was more than enough to keep you glued to the back of your seat. What really set the 959 apart, though, was its advanced four-wheel drive system. This electronically controlled system could shift power between the front and rear wheels dynamically, providing not just traction when needed, but also enhance the car's handling. Unlike many all-wheel drive systems of its time, this one was constantly adapting, even when conditions were perfect, making the car feel balanced and predictable on the road. Considering its era, the 959 was surprisingly light, weighing in at under 3,200 pounds. For a car loaded with such complex machinery and without modern composite materials, that's quite an achievement. It weighed about as much as a BMW E36 M3, yet it delivered far more performance and technological experience. Number 4. The Ferrari F40. The Ferrari F40 isn't just another Ferrari, it's one of those cars that's left a lasting mark on the automotive history. In 1987, Ferrari dropped a bombshell with a supercar that changed the game for performance cars forever. The F40, in a way, is the very definition of Ferrari's wild, rebellious side. Now, if you love fast cars, you'll want to know that the F40 was the latest model overseen by Enzo Ferrari himself. That's right, he was 88, battling illness, and still had a hand in shaping this beast. But what makes the F40 so special? Well, let's travel back to its roots. It was born from a project based on the Ferrari 288 GTO, a car that was originally meant for Group B racing, which got canceled. So, imagine the F40 at this evolution, taking lessons from that race car and making them even more extreme for the street. You had a 2.9-liter V8 with 2 turbochargers, pumping out 478 horsepower. In today's terms, that might sound average, but back then, it was jaw-dropping. And to make it even more exciting, it weighed under 3,000 pounds. Push that gas pedal, and it rocketed from 0 to 60 in just over 4 seconds. So, want to take a wild guess at how fast this beast could go? Well, it shattered the 200-mile-per-hour barrier. The F40 was the first production car to hit that mind-blowing speed. Do you think that record-breaking moment was the key to solidifying the F40's place as one of the greatest supercars of all time? Now, its design wasn't just for show either. With a body made of Kevlar and carbon fiber and aerodynamics that looked straight out of a fighter jet, the F40 was all about performance. The car was built for pure driving pleasure. Inside, everything was stripped down to essentials. You'd only find an air conditioner to keep things cool because, well, it's still a Ferrari. But the real thrill, the turbocharged power delivery could be unpredictable, even for seasoned drivers. The F40 was known for being a bit wild at high speeds, and many drivers found themselves wrestling with its power. F1 driver Gerhard Berger even once described nearly losing control at 120 miles per hour because of it. Now, with only 1,311 units made, and a price tag that starts around $400,000, the F40 quickly became an icon. Today, some of these cars fetch millions at auctions. Do you think it's rarity and legacy to justify those eye-watering prices? Number 3. The Vector W8. The Vector W8 is often the hidden gem of 1980s American supercars. You've probably never heard of it, but once you know its story, you'll never forget it. This car was a pure product of the American dream and outlandish vision that pushed the limits of speed, design, and luxury. But here's where the twist comes in. Despite its mind-blowing performance and radical design, the Vector W8 was never really meant for the masses. In fact, it was never meant to be a luxury supercar. Jerry Wiegert, the mind behind the Vector, had been dreaming of a groundbreaking supercar since 1971. Over the next 2 decades, his vision evolved into the Vector W8, which finally hit the streets in 1990. It was a car that had an incredibly long development period, but this wasn't due to lack of ambition. Wiegert was simply uncompromising. He wanted the Vector to be the best, borrowing heavily from aeronautical engineering. The W8 was packed with top-notch technology, having features like aircraft-grade wiring and fire extinguishers, plus a robust 6.0-liter twin-turbocharged V8 engine that could crank out 625 horsepower and 630 pound-per-feet of torque. This impressive powertrain enabled the car to reach a top speed of over 200 miles per hour and hit 0 to 60 in about 4 seconds. Yet, despite this performance, the car was equipped with a 3-speed automatic transmission rather than a traditional manual, which was unusual for a supercar. However, all this innovation came at a cost, $450,000 to be exact, and the supercar world wasn't ready to part with that kind of cash. Wiegert's refusal to compromise on quality led to high production costs, and when the W8 was tested, things went embarrassingly wrong. Transmission issues and overheating plagued the prototypes, and though others later praised the car, it was too late. Public confidence had been shaken. Adding to the bad press, tennis star Andre Agassi filed a complaint when the carpeting in his W8's trunk melted due to an overheated exhaust. Despite Wiegert's defense, Vector's reputation took a hit, and by 1993, the company went into receivership after producing just 17 W8s. While the W8 may not have set the world on fire, its story didn't end there, leading to the creation of the Avtec WX3 and the M12, continuing the Vector legacy with many twists and turns ahead. Number 2. The Lotus Esprit Turbo. Let me take you back to 1976, the year the Lotus Esprit made its grand entrance. Now, if you've ever seen The Spy Who Loved Me, you'll instantly recognize the Esprit as James Bond's ride of choice. And that movie gave it a legendary status. From then on, this sleek sports car was etched into pop culture, and even today, it's one of those cars people can't stop talking about, even when they think of iconic movie cars. But let's rewind a bit. When the Esprit first launched, it had this striking design. a sharp, angular look like it was carved from a block of paper. The design was the brainchild of Giugiaro, with finishing touches by Lotus's own Oliver Winterbottom. It wasn't just a pretty face though. Lotus built the Esprit with a super strong backbone chassis, something Lotus fans knew well. The early versions even had tartan patterned seats, pretty bold for the time. Now, here's where it gets interesting. Lotus didn't waste time evolving the Esprit. Just a year after the original hit the streets, they rolled out the Esprit S2. It had some cool upgrades, like redesigned wheels and added spoilers for better aerodynamics. They also tweaked the engine over time, giving it a bit more punch, especially with the Series 2.2 that came out in 1980. But there was one particular feature that got people talking. What do you think it was? Well, it was the Esprit Turbo in 1981 that really kicked things up a notch. This version came with a 2.2-liter turbocharged engine that packed 210 horsepower, taking the Esprit into true supercar territory. With a top speed of over 150 miles per hour, it became the poster car for a generation of speed lovers. And let's not forget its second James Bond appearance, in For Your Eyes Only. By 1987, Peter Stevens gave the Esprit a modern facelift, and that led to more versions like the S4, Sport 300, and GT3, each adding their own flavor to the Esprit legacy. But the real power punch came in 1996 with the Esprit V8. This beast had a 3.5-liter engine that could take you from 0 to 60 in under 5 seconds. Now, for all you car lovers out there, what do you think? Does the Esprit's long evolution make it one of the greatest British supercars of all time? It sure had the performance and the style to make a lasting mark in automotive history. Number 1. De Tomaso Pantera GT5. Let me take you back to 1980 when De Tomaso shook things up at the Turin Motor Show by unveiling the Pantera GT5. It had big, brawny wheel arches, deep side skirts, and massive spoilers. It was a car that looked like it was ready to tear up the road. The Pantera GT5 was built for the time, tapping into the trend of aggressive styling, and it sure grabbed the attention. Plus, De Tomaso was one of the first to jump onto the low-profile tire trend, thanks to Pirelli's revolutionary P7 line. What made the Pantera GT5 special? It was like the everyman's version of the Lamborghini Countach. Sure, the Countach had a fancy V12 engine with tons of complexity, but the Pantera kept things simple with a Ford V8. This meant that any decent mechanic could work on it. No need for a specialized Italian team. That was a big deal back then, because it made the Pantera more affordable and easier to maintain without sacrificing that supercar performance. Now, let's talk about the GT5's evolution. While the car was a hit for a time, its somewhat clunky body additions began to look dated as the years went on. So, De Tomaso gave the Pantera another facelift in 1984, introducing the GT5S. This version kept all the aggressive styling of the GT5 but cleaned it up with smoother all-steel bodywork. Everything looked more refined. The wide fenders, side skirts, and deep front spoiler were all integrated into the car's design much more seamlessly. Underneath, the GT5S kept the same robust engineering, a 5.7-liter Ford Cleveland V8 engine, cranking out 350 horsepower. That engine was all about raw power, and with a 5-speed ZF gearbox, this machine was built for speed. It also had a strong suspension setup designed by Giampaolo Di Lara, giving it fantastic handling for such a muscular car. The interior? It was a big step up from the original Panteras. Gone were the cheap materials of the early days. Instead, you got leather everywhere. On the seats, the dash, the doors, it was a much more luxurious place to be. But in true Pantera fashion, some of the old Ford switchgear remained, keeping a bit of that raw, old-school charm. Now, here's a question for you. Do you think the Pantera GT5S deserves to be in the same conversation as the Lamborghini or Ferrari? It did have the performance, the looks, and the unmistakable Italian flair, but with a heart that any mechanic could work on. Leave your thoughts in the comments section below, and don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Thanks for watching. We'll see you guys soon.
10 rarest Dodge muscle cars you'll never own. Muscle car enthusiasts recognize a legendary golden era ride when they see and hear it. A powerful, big block V8. A mid to full-size torso with defined lines and powerful haunches, an exhaust system that emits noises piped directly from the lowest realms of hell. These vehicles are hard to find in your local shop. And here's a list of those hidden gems that most probably will only read about in a magazine or see on TV. Those who own them are kinda selfish, keeping them for themselves and not sharing them with the world. But we are here to bring you the 10 rarest of them. Enjoy. Number 10. The 1969 Dodge Dart GTS 440. The 1969 Dodge Dart GTS 440 is a small powerhouse that has made an indelible impression on the muscle car scene. Only 640 of this limited edition drag-inspired vehicle were built, earning it a unique position in automotive history. Dodge designed the Dart GTS with a large 440 cubic inch engine, resulting in a lightweight, street-legal rocket. However, putting that massive engine in such a small body created a strange beast that wasn't the most practical choice for everyday driving, resulting in a limited manufacturing run and making it even more uncommon today. This small vehicle with a large heart could outperform its competition, making it a revered symbol among drag racers and muscle car enthusiasts alike. With its slim body and strong engine, it immediately earned a reputation as a street fighter, outperforming many larger muscle cars of the period. The Dart GTS 440 is a sought-after treasure among collectors, and finding one at a big auction is a rare pleasure. Its history as a little but powerful force continues to enthrall automobile enthusiasts, cementing its place as a genuinely legendary muscle vehicle. In a world where more was typically better, the Dart GTS 440 demonstrated that smaller could be stronger, and a lot more fun to drive. Number 9. The 1969 Dodge Charger Daytona. The 1969 Dodge Charger Daytona is a real heavyweight champion among American muscle cars, and a rare find for auto lovers. This automobile, constructed in a limited run of only 503 units, was originally developed for NASCAR racing, with every feature geared towards speed and aerodynamics. The Daytona's distinctive appearance is tough to miss due to its large back wing and pointed nose cone, which allowed it to cut through the air like a fighter aircraft. This novel design, however, was not well received by normal drivers at the time. Its striking, futuristic appearance was a touch too much for the streets, and it did not sell as well as Dodge had planned. Dodge Daytona had featured special body modifications that included a 23-inch tall stabilizer wing on the rear deck, a special sheet metal nose cone that replaced the traditional upright front grille, a flush rear backlight, a window cap to cover the original Charger's recessed rear window, specific front fenders and hood that were modeled after the upcoming 1970 Charger, stainless steel A-pillar covers, and fender-mounted cooling scoops. The Daytona was manufactured to the 1969 Charger's RT trim requirements, which included heavy-duty suspension and brakes and a standard 440 cubic inch Magnum engine. Collectors will be particularly interested in the optional 426 cubic inch Hemi V8 engine, which only 70 of 503 Daytonas carried. Why is the Charger Daytona such a rare and desirable vehicle today? For starters, it was one of the first vehicles to break the 200-mile-per-hour barrier on a NASCAR circuit, establishing a new speed record. This accomplishment alone solidified its legendary status and established a landmark in NASCAR history. Today, the handful that exist are mostly owned by private collectors or proudly displayed in museums, where they are cherished by muscle car geeks and nostalgic admirers. Its scarcity and unrivaled street cred have caused its value to rise, making it not just a legendary automobile, but also a worthwhile investment. Number 8. The 1971 Dodge Challenger RT 426 Hemi. The 1971 Dodge Challenger RT 426 Hemi is the stuff of muscle car legends, and with only 71 units built, it's one of the rarest vehicles on the road. As the automobile industry began to change in the early 1970s, stiffer regulations and shifting consumer tastes meant that the once thriving market for high-powered engines, such as the renowned 426 Hemi, was shrinking. Dodge, realizing this tendency, constructed only a few of these terrifying cars, making it one of the last Hemi-powered Challengers to leave the factory. Despite its limited production, the Challenger RT 426 Hemi delivers a powerful punch. Known for its raw power and aggressive design, this vehicle is sometimes regarded as a holy grail among muscle car enthusiasts. When these beauties go up at auction, they usually command six-figure prices, making them a sought-after reward for anybody fortunate enough to acquire one. The majority of these rare animals are kept in private collections, with a handful making cameos at high-end automobile exhibits, where they continue to captivate enthusiasts and collectors alike. Each car exemplifies Dodge's tradition of great performance and uniqueness, and they are frequently shown in museums dedicated to automotive history. The 1971 Challenger RT 426 Hemi is more than just a car. It's a piece of muscle car history that captures the essence of a period, leaving car enthusiasts enthralled and wanting a taste of that legendary power. Number 7. The 1971 Dodge Charger RT Hemi. The 1971 Dodge Charger RT Hemi is a veritable unicorn in the world of classic muscle vehicles, with only 63 units made. This model symbolizes a watershed point in automotive history, since it was one of the final big-engine muscle cars built before pollution rules began to take effect. By 1971, customer attention had shifted to fuel efficiency, making the Charger RT Hemi a rare remnant of a bygone period when horsepower ruled supreme. What makes the Charger RT Hemi so unique? It all comes down to the powerful 426 Hemi engine, which has converted this elegant beast into a fearsome road force. The Charger's powerful style and undeniable presence were intended to impress and dominate. However, when demand for fuel-efficient automobiles increased, supply declined, making each of the 63 units even more valuable. The 1971 Charger RT Hemi is now a prized possession among vehicle collectors and admirers. Many of these vehicles are owned by private collectors who value their rarity and frequently preserve them in excellent low-mileage condition owing to restricted use. When they do go up for sale, they usually fetch hefty prices, reflecting their great value and iconic significance. It's a sentimental reminder of the high-performance period that defined a generation. The 1971 Charger RT Hemi exemplifies the golden age of muscle cars, enthralling fans and collectors alike with its combination of raw power and rich history. Number 6. 1966 Dodge Dart Hemi. The 1966 Dodge Dart Hemi is a famous figure in drag racing, and with just 50 units built, it's an extremely uncommon find. This Dart, designed as a lightweight factory-built drag car, was only intended for racing, demonstrating Dodge's dedication to high-performance automobiles. Equipped with a monster 426 Hemi V8 engine, this small powerhouse was designed to conquer the drag strip, providing an exciting experience for those lucky enough to get behind the wheel. However, because of the low demand for a car that was not suitable for street usage, Dodge limited manufacture to only 50 units, making it a genuine collector's item. Its massive and powerful engine allows it to accelerate with ferocity and leave opponents in the dust. This type immediately became known as one of the most sought-after drag racing cars of its day, praised for its sheer power and excellent engineering. Many of these darts are now kept in private collections, treasured by aficionados who understand their historical value. When they do surface at auctions, they attract collectors looking to possess a piece of racing history. Unfortunately, few survive in their original condition, since several were regularly utilized on the track, resulting in wear and tear over time. The 1966 Dodge Dart Hemi is more than simply a vehicle. It represents an age when sheer power and speed dominated the racing world. For muscle car enthusiasts, it's a thrilling reminder of the golden age of drag racing and the never-ending search for speed. Now, before we proceed to our next rare gem, we would like to take a second of your time to remind you to subscribe to our channel and like this video for your support for more content like this. Number 5. 1971 Dodge Super B 440 6-pack. The 1971 Dodge Super B 440 6-pack is a highly sought-after muscle automobile among collectors. With just 5 units made and a powerful 440 6-pack engine combined with a 4-speed manual transmission, this vehicle is the ultimate grail for muscle car fans. As Dodge began to phase out high-performance options in the early 1970s, the Super B became a transitory icon of a period defined by power and speed. At the heart of this beast is the 446-pack engine, which is known for its amazing performance and legendary status. With 3 two-barrel carburetors, this system optimizes airflow while producing jaw-dropping horsepower and torque that will send shivers down any auto enthusiast's spine. It was a strong force on the street and at the drag strip, capturing the spirit of muscle car performance. Today, the 1971 Super B 446-pack is highly valued by private collectors and is frequently shown at vehicle events and auctions to highlight its rarity and worth. They are pieces of automotive history, reflecting the essence of a time when American muscle reigned supreme. The combination of restricted manufacturing and a strong engine has made this model extremely rare, commanding astounding amounts at auctions. For those who are fortunate enough to acquire one, the 1971 Dodge Super B 446-pack marks a thrilling return to the golden age of muscle vehicles, when raw power and performance ruled the road. It's a fantasy automobile that continues to attract both fans and collectors, demonstrating Dodge's dedication to high-performance engineering. Number 4. 1970 Dodge Challenger RT Hemi Convertible 426 Hemi engine. The 1970 Dodge Challenger RT Hemi Convertible is a slice of automotive history wrapped in brawn and flair. This vehicle is as uncommon as it is powerful, with only 9 units constructed, all powered by the famed 426 Hemi engine. This Challenger's unusual combination of a convertible body and a high-powered Hemi engine makes it a prized possession for both collectors and enthusiasts. Dodge knew that this layout may not appeal to the masses, thus manufacturing was limited, which only added to its attractiveness over time. What distinguishes the Challenger RT Hemi Convertible is its incredible performance and eye-catching look. The 426 Hemi engine provides an exciting driving experience, blending brutal might and graceful beauty. The open-top design lets drivers completely enjoy the excitement of the ride, with the wind in their hair and the sound of the Hemi ringing through the streets. This vehicle is one of the last real muscle cars of its age, manufactured shortly before tougher emissions and safety rules began to reshape the automotive scene in the early 1970s. These exquisite vehicles are highly sought after, frequently selling for more than $1 million at auction. Many are in private collections, but a handful are on display in museums or owned by celebrity collectors, where they continue to evoke wonder and adoration. The 1970 Challenger RT Hemi Convertible represents American muscle car culture, embodying the essence of an age defined by power, freedom, and a love of the open road. Owning one of these beauties is about owning a piece of history that speaks to vehicle enthusiasts everywhere. Number 3. 1967 Dodge Coronet RT Hemi Convertible. The 1967 Coronet RT Hemi Convertible is a muscle car legend, with only 2 vehicles produced. Because of its scarcity, it is one of the most valuable automobile collectibles. The Coronet RT was a powerhouse on its own, but when joined with the famed Hemi engine, it became a masterpiece of performance and style. The fact that just 2 convertibles were ever made makes this vehicle a real muscle car unicorn, enthralling both fans and collectors. What makes the Coronet RT Hemi Convertible so unique? Despite its limited production, this vehicle marks the apex of Dodge's engineering expertise at the height of the muscle car period. The Hemi engine is well known for its immense power and torque, providing an exciting and unique driving experience. The elegant lines and convertible body design provide an air of elegance, allowing drivers to fully enjoy the muscle car experience while basking in the sun and listening to the engine roar. These rare diamonds are rarely seen in public, and one is known to be privately kept. Their rarity and high-performance specifications drive their value, which frequently approaches $1 million at auction. For those who are fortunate enough to see one, the Coronet RT Hemi Convertible is a beautiful reminder of the golden period of American muscle cars, when raw power and cutting-edge design combined spectacularly. Owning or even seeing this masterpiece is like clutching a piece of history, evoking the spirit of a bygone period when muscle dominated the roads and performance reigned supreme. Number 2. 1970 Dodge Coronet Super B Hemi Convertible. The 1970 Dodge Coronet Super B Hemi convertible is a spectacular example of muscle car rarity, with just 2 built and only 1 believed to have survived. This magnificent vehicle is a fantastic combination of performance and distinctive style, making it one of the most uncommon Dodge muscle car combinations. The convertible option for the Super B was particularly unique, as this vehicle was often seen as a low-cost muscle car, focused on power and performance rather than elegance. At its core is the iconic Hemi engine, which is known for producing exciting performance and savage acceleration. The combination of this strong engine and the open-air design results in a thrilling driving experience that exemplifies muscle car culture. It's a car that not only has raw power, but also exudes the feeling of freedom and adventure that comes with top-down driving. The surviving model is in a private collection, valued for its rarity and historical significance. The distinctive design raises its worth well into the 7-figure bracket, making it a sought-after prize among collectors. The Coronet Super B Hemi convertible exemplifies Dodge's inventive attitude during the muscle car era, demonstrating how performance and style can come together memorably. For those who are fortunate enough to come upon this wonderful machine, it is a unique piece of automotive history, reminding us of a period when power and passion controlled the highways. Number 1. 1964 Dodge Hemi Charger. The 1964 Dodge Hemi Charger is a pioneering prototype that laid the groundwork for one of the most recognizable names in automotive history. With only 1 prototype produced, this one-of-a-kind car symbolizes a significant step forward in Dodge's history. The Hemi Charger, powered by the famed 426 Hemi V8, was created with a futuristic appearance that would impact the Charger line's design language for many years. The Hemi Charger stands out for its forward-thinking design and engineering. As a concept vehicle, it introduced the world to the Charger moniker, laying the groundwork for what would become a popular and long-lasting model in Dodge's range. Its sleek looks, aggressive posture, and cutting-edge technology set it apart even from its contemporaries. Although it never went into full production, this prototype had a huge impact, captivating automobile fans' imaginations and establishing the standard for future muscle vehicles. The 1964 Hemi Charger is currently in a private collection and is a highly sought-after piece of automotive history. Its rarity and significance make it extremely valuable, both monetarily and as a cultural artifact. For both collectors and enthusiasts, this automobile represents the inventive spirit of the 1960s, a period when American automotive design was pushing limits and redefining performance. The lone prototype stands as a reminder of Dodge's ambitious goal and the beginning of a history that continues to resonate with muscle car enthusiasts all across the world. Few vehicles can match the appeal and intrigue of the rarest models we've seen. Each model tells a tale about performance, technical brilliance, and the never-ending chase of speed, producing a legacy that continues to inspire automobile fans and collectors today. We recall that they are more than simply precious belongings. That's why it's safe to say that you'll probably never own one.